Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we are going to continue to reinforce the Alfarrari. Alright guys, welcome back, and those watching last week will have seen that I spent a fair bit of time doing some front end chassis reinforcement on the Alfarrari. It's only the beginning, I've still got a bunch more to go. For those who missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and think about subscribing. If you haven't, it does help us out. I did mention last week that I got these things from someone a couple of years ago, and it was actually Joey, Rinashi73 on Instagram. I'll put a link. He does a bunch of these bits and pieces for the Alfas, not just here. There's a bunch of other reinforcing plates and stuff that he puts around the place. So I'll put a link, and thanks again, Joey. Much appreciated. They are really good, and I apologise for lost your details the first time in the several thousand contacts I've had on Facebook, Instagram, email since, and they just got lost and I couldn't find it again. But yes, go and check it out. They are ready to go. Did the job nicely. So today we are going to continue to move forward and get underneath the car, and I'll show you what my plans are for working my way back. Okay, so moving forward, I thought I would show you what I've been thinking about trying to tie the front end of the car to the back end of the car, because in this car, it's a little disjointed. Most cars that I've dealt with seem to have some sort of chassis rail sort of system that runs from the very front of the car and sort of roughly joins up all the way through to the back of the car. And that's not really the case with these Alfas. They do have this sort of triple layered sill panel here that actually provides a lot of the strength on the outside of the car, but it sort of ties from front corner to front corner, but it's not attached to the chassis rail except for by thin sheet metal. And this front chassis rail runs all the way to the front of the car but stops halfway underneath the driver's seat. And then the pickup, and there's a chassis rail that starts again behind the back seat. So there's a bit in the middle where it's not connected. And my thought is that I want to try and build some sort of brace connection, joining these together and making a chassis rail that flows through the whole car, reinforcing this front end chassis rail and tying it all together in the one hit. So I'm going to do a little bit of measuring and playing around now and see what I can come up with. All right, so my plan to tie everything together is I've added this square tube in to tie the front to the rear. It's going to tuck into where the passenger or the rear seat floor is, which I'm no longer using. There's a roll cage in the back of this car. It's not going to have back seats. It's purely a two-seater car now, so I'm not concerned about sort of making these lumps in the floor. It's only the 40 mil high lump. It's 40 by 40 mil square tube that I've cupped over the top of the rail. So I've cut the top of the tube out and wrapped it around the rail, and I'm going to weld it along to the rail so it actually sort of cap this rail in and lock it in so that it's nice and strong. I'll put some drainage holes in it just so that it makes sure everything can, if it does get any water or anything in it, it will drain. And I'm going to box this all in so we'll have a nice locked in section, and then I'm going to do something about tying in this rear rail to this because it's slightly offset from what from the front rail. So at least now there'll be some structure there to be able to sort of make some beef that will actually tie the whole car together and just add that bit of extra strength. All right, so I've managed to cut out the top of my square tube and welded it onto the chassis rail and tied it all the way back to basically the base at the back of the back seat. And I still need to make some sort of bracketry reinforcing to sort of join up to this side. But basically, my plan is now that I should have a rail that goes all the way through the entire length of the car to tie it all together. But before I move on from here, I'm going to go over to the other side and get to the same point. So you can see now that I have welded in the chassis rail on both sides now and tied it into the floor. It's quite difficult with the old thin sheet metal tying it into this nice new stuff, so it's not pretty, but it is definitely doing the job and it's nice and solid now. And I've welded it onto the vertical part of the back seat. As you can see a little bit here. That's the underside of the back seat there. And I need to punch a hole through here to join up to this rear chassis rail. And the way I'm going to do that is I am going to get another piece of square tubing and punch it through and connect it to both my new chassis rail and the old chassis rail. And I think that'll tie the whole lot together quite nicely. All right, so my brace piece, I've got these tapered ends that I've welded onto it so that it can go in and sort of be welded onto the base support pieces. So I just like the TIG for that sort of thing. It makes it nice and neat. I'm going to go and weld that into the car now, and we'll have one side done, and then we have to do the same thing on the other. All right, so we have our frame tied together up here, and the same over this side's all tied in. The welds are definitely not pretty, but they are doing the job. And if I take you up inside, you can see here how I've tied it into the frame rail. So again, and it's the same on the other side. I haven't welded the inside strip yet, but it's all there, tied in. So we have frame chassis rails from front to back. All right, well, that was a whole lot of very, very messy, noisy, uncomfortable work to get there, but we have the chassis rails done. They're reinforced all the way along and tied together just to give a bit more rigidity. It was one of the things that the engineer wanted for this car, to make sure that it was actually solid enough. And yeah, and I always question that this sort of, it didn't have anything that sort of followed through the entire car. So that's given it quite a bit more sort of torsional strength and just strength the whole way along the chassis. There's still more to come because these things are sort of weak in the back, and we already have done a fair bit by putting this panhide rod in, and I've done a lot of reinforcing in this rear suspension area, but there's more there to come as well. So it's getting there as far as all this reinforcing goes. As I said last week, it's also going to be seam welded the whole way through, so that's something that I'll do when I get it on the rotisserie. It's going to be much easier when I can just spin it around, get to every seam, have it right in front of me. It's going to be much easier to do it then. So we'll have to leave that now for this week. That's all the time I have, so I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, the first racing version of the Ferrari 275 was the 275 GTB Competizione Speciale. These were intended to succeed the 250 GTO as Ferrari's GT class entry, but the FIA refused to homologate them. A compromise was reached after Enzo Ferrari threatened to abandon the GT class altogether. In the end, only 4 of these Speciales were ever built. They had thin gauge alloy bodywork and ran the 250 LM version of the Colombo V12, making around 300 horsepower. The chassis used smaller tubing than the production car and had holes drilled in the interior panels, magnesium engine, transaxle, and the plexiglass windows to save weight. One of these cars went on to come third in the 1965 24 Hours of Le Mans. Ferrari then produced 10 versions of the less radical 275 GTB Competizione Cliente as a customer race car, and also to test the market and to attempt to placate the FIA for homologation. For the 1966 season, Ferrari built 12 lightweight 275 GTBC race cars. These were super lightweight race cars, and they used aluminium panels which were riveted on to make them extra quick to change. The bumpers had no internal support and were simply bolted on to the sheet metal. And the cars were fitted with specially made wire wheels using Dunlop's latest racing tyre technology. This, however, would prove to be the weak spot in the GTBC, as the power surging through the grippy tyres would actually break the spokes of the wheel. And that was the last time Ferrari would ever use spoked wheels on their race cars.
All right, another one where I don't feel like I got that much done, but it was a lot of time cutting and welding and fitting and making these parts. But I feel like I've actually tied the whole car together now. It's actually got some structure from front to back.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
Still more reinforcing to come. There's a few things I need to reinforce in the rear, and yeah, it's getting there. And then hopefully I can get it all ready to put back on the rotisserie and start doing the seam welding and all that sort of stuff. So lots of welding to come. Lots and lots and lots of welding.
Yay. It's so loud. I said to Jeff, I was like, I'm just going to shut the garage door because it's so loud. And he goes, oh, is it noisy? I'm like, gotcha.
I've got sort of headphones in and then earmuffs over the top of that. So yeah, maybe I'm not really realising how loud
he really isn't, and he's oblivious to it. So I just...
Yes.
Our neighbours are very saintly.
Thankfully, we have really fantastic
awesome
neighbours.
Right.
Anyway,
like, subscribe if you haven't. If you want to keep following the videos, if you want to see them a day early with no ads, and support Jeff and his welding and grinding adventures, Patreon, and just hope everyone, stay safe
and
let them know about what you think about the videos.
Yep. Enjoy us on the next one. All right, guys. See you next time.
Hey guys. The first racing version of the Ferrari GT5, the first racing version of the Ferrari 275 was the GTB. Hey guys, the first monkey. They had thin gauge alloy bodywork and ran the. I'm finding it hard today. The chassis used. The chassis used smaller tubing than the production car, and had drills. The chassis car used smaller tubing.
The chassis.
For the 1966 Ferrari, and that was the last time Ferrari would ever.